Good evening, everyone, and welcome to The Droning Professor. Tonight we're going to learn about why certain smells trigger memories. Now, as always, take a moment for some deep breaths, letting your mind and body relax for a good night of sleep. So, as you make yourselves comfortable, please take a moment to let us know where you're listening from and feel free to subscribe. As we begin tonight's lesson, I want you all to close your eyes for a moment. Think about a smell from your childhood, perhaps your grandmother's perfume, fresh-baked cookies, or that distinctive scent of new school supplies. Now open your eyes. I'm willing to bet that many of you didn't just remember the smell. You were transported back in time. You could almost feel yourself in that moment again, couldn't you? Welcome to one of the most fascinating topics in neuroscience, the extraordinary relationship between smell and memory. Tonight, we're going to explore why that whiff of apple pie can suddenly make you feel like you're 8 years old again, standing in your grandmother's kitchen. We'll dive deep into the neurological highways that make this possible, examine the evolutionary advantages of this system, and understand why smell is arguably our most emotionally powerful sense. Let's start with what scientists call the Proust phenomenon, named after French novelist Marcel Proust. In his masterwork, In Search of Lost Time, Proust wrote about how dipping a Madeleine cookie into tea triggered a flood of childhood memories. Now, I know what you're thinking. Professor, did we sign up for a literature class by mistake? Bear with me, because Proust was essentially describing what neuroscientists wouldn't fully understand until decades later. The Proust phenomenon describes the vivid autobiographical memories triggered by familiar odors. These aren't just any memories, they're typically more emotional, more detailed, and feel more real than memories triggered by other senses. Chu and Downs in 2002 showed this. It's as if smell has a direct hotline to our past, bypassing the usual cognitive filters we use to process information. But why smell? Why not the sight of that Madeleine, or the sound of the teacup clinking? To understand this, we need to take a journey through your nose and into your brain. Don't worry, I promise this will be more exciting than it sounds. After all, we're talking about the only sense that can make a grown adult weep over a stranger's laundry detergent. Let's begin our anatomical adventure at the beginning, your nose. When you smell something, you're actually detecting airborne chemical molecules. These molecules dissolve in the mucus lining of your nasal cavity and bind to olfactory receptor neurons. Now here's where it gets interesting. These aren't just any neurons. You have about 6 million of them, each one equipped with hair-like projections called cilia that contain receptor proteins. Buck and Axel discovered this in 1991. Think of these receptors as incredibly sophisticated molecular locks and odor molecules as keys. When the right key fits the right lock, it triggers a cascade of electrical signals. But here's the crucial part. And this is what makes smell unique among all our senses. These signals take a very special route to your brain. While information from your eyes, ears, and touch receptors takes what we might call the scenic route through the thalamus, your brain's relay station, smell takes the express lane. Olfactory neurons project directly through the cribriform plate, a thin, perforated bone at the base of your skull, and connect immediately to the olfactory bulb in your brain. Gottfried explained this in 2010. Now, pay attention to where this olfactory bulb sends its information, because this is the key to understanding why smell is so emotionally powerful. The olfactory bulb has direct connections to two crucial brain regions, the limbic system and the orbitofrontal cortex. If the brain were a city, smell would have a direct subway line to both the emotional district and the memory district, while all other senses would have to take multiple transfers through downtown. The limbic system is sometimes called the emotional brain, and for good reason. It includes structures like the amygdala, your fear and emotion processor, and the hippocampus, your memory consolidator. When smell information arrives at the limbic system, it's like sending an emotion-laden telegram directly to your brain's CEO. The amygdala, in particular, plays a crucial role in what we call emotional memory. Ledoux described this in 2000. It doesn't just store memories, it tags them with emotional significance. This is why the smell of smoke can instantly trigger fear responses, or why the scent of a former partner's cologne can cause such intense emotional reactions even years later. The amygdala is saying, "This is important, pay attention, remember this." The hippocampus, meanwhile, is your brain's master librarian. It's responsible for consolidating short-term memories into long-term storage and for contextual memory, remembering not just what happened, but where and when it happened. Squire and Candle wrote about this in 2009. When smell information reaches the hippocampus directly, it creates what neuroscientists call rich contextual memories. These are memories that don't just contain facts, but entire scenes, complete with emotional color and sensory detail. The orbitofrontal cortex is where smell information gets interpreted and integrated with other sensory information and memories. This region is crucial for what we call odor-induced memory recall. Gottfried and colleagues explored this in 2004. It's here that your brain decides whether that mysterious smell is threatening or pleasant, familiar or novel, and most importantly, what memories it should connect to. This region also explains why smell memories can be so specific, yet so difficult to verbalize. The orbitofrontal cortex processes smell information in a way that's more holistic and less analytical than, say, visual processing. This is why you might recognize your elementary school cafeteria smell instantly but struggle to describe it to someone else. Your brain knows exactly what it is, but that knowledge exists in a realm that's somewhat beyond words. Now, you might wonder why our brains evolved this direct connection between smell and emotion/memory. The answer lies in survival. For most of human evolutionary history, our sense of smell was quite literally a matter of life and death. Consider our ancestors. They needed to quickly identify spoiled food, disgust response, detect predators, fear response, find suitable mates, attraction response, and remember, safe versus dangerous locations. Memory consolidation. An animal that could instantly recall that berry smell made me sick, or that musky scent means predator nearby, had a significant survival advantage. Stevenson noted this in 2010. This evolutionary pressure created what researchers call the hedonic bias in olfactory memory. We're particularly good at remembering smells associated with strong, positive, or negative experiences. Hertz wrote about this in 2004. This is why the smell of your childhood home feels so comforting, while the scent of a hospital might trigger anxiety, even if you've never had a traumatic medical experience. Your brain is constantly cataloging smells and their associated emotional states, building a sophisticated survival database. Let's dive deeper into the molecular level of this process. When you encounter a familiar smell, your brain doesn't just recognize it, it reconstructs the entire memory associated with it. This process involves several key neurotransmitters and brain chemicals. First, there's acetylcholine, which plays a crucial role in attention and learning. When the olfactory bulb detects a familiar or significant odor, it releases acetylcholine, which essentially tells your brain, "Pay attention, this might be important." Wilson and Sullivan documented this in 2011. Then we have dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with reward and pleasure. Familiar, pleasant smells can trigger dopamine release, which explains why catching a whiff of your mother's cooking can literally make you feel good. It's your brain's reward system, activating in response to a positive olfactory memory. Gottfried studied this in 2006. Perhaps most importantly, there's norepinephrine, which is crucial for memory consolidation. This neurotransmitter helps strengthen the connections between neurons, essentially making memories stick better. The direct connection between smell and the limbic system means that odor-triggered memories often have higher concentrations of norepinephrine, making them more vivid and lasting. Sarah discussed this in 2009. Interestingly, our ability to form strong smell memory associations develops early and remains remarkably stable throughout life. Studies have shown that people can recognize odors they were exposed to in early childhood, even decades later. Engin and Ross found this in 1973. This has profound implications for understanding human development and the formation of personal identity. During critical periods of development, particularly in early childhood and adolescence, our brains are especially plastic, meaning they're more capable of forming new neural connections. Smells encountered during these periods often become deeply embedded in our memory systems. This is why the sense of childhood Play-Doh, fresh crayons, particular foods can trigger such vivid recollections in adults. The stability of these early smell memory associations also explains why certain therapeutic approaches use olfactory stimulation to help patients with memory disorders. While patients with Alzheimer's disease may lose many types of memories, smell-triggered memories often persist longer than others. Weinstock and colleagues reported this in 1993. While the basic neurological mechanisms of smell memory connections are universal, the specific associations we form are highly individual and culturally influenced. What smells pleasant or unpleasant, what memories are triggered by particular odors, and how we interpret these experiences all vary based on our personal histories and cultural backgrounds. For example, the smell of fermented fish sauce might trigger pleasant memories of family meals in someone from Southeast Asia, while causing disgust in someone unfamiliar with this cuisine. The durian fruit, beloved in many Asian countries for its complex aroma, is often described as repulsive by those from cultures where it's not consumed. These differences aren't just preferences, they represent fundamentally different neural pathways and memory associations formed through experience. Ayabe Kanamura and colleagues studied this in 1998. This cultural variability in smell perception has important implications for fields ranging from marketing to healthcare. Understanding how different populations respond to various odors can help in designing everything from consumer products to therapeutic environments. While we often focus on the pleasant aspects of smell-triggered memories, it's important to acknowledge that this powerful connection can also work against us. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, often involves intrusive smell memory associations. A veteran might be triggered by the smell of diesel fuel, or an accident survivor might panic at the scent of a particular cleaning product used in the hospital. Vermetten and Bremner explored this in 2003. These traumatic smell memory associations can be particularly difficult to overcome because they bypass rational thought processes. Unlike a consciously remembered trauma, which can be processed and contextualized, a smell-triggered flashback feels immediate and real. The person isn't just remembering the traumatic event, they're reliving it, complete with all the associated emotions and physical responses. Understanding this mechanism has led to new therapeutic approaches. Some therapists now use controlled exposure to trauma-associated smells as part of treatment, helping patients gradually rebuild positive associations or develop coping strategies. Others use pleasant smells to help create positive anchors during therapy sessions. Humans aren't just individuals processing smells in isolation, we're social creatures, and our sense of smell plays a crucial role in social memory and bonding. Each person has a unique scent signature, created by a combination of genetics, diet, lifestyle, and environmental factors. We're remarkably good at recognizing these individual scent signatures, even unconsciously. Studies have shown that mothers can identify their newborn babies by smell alone within hours of birth, and babies show preference for their mother's scent. Shaw and colleagues found this in 2003. Romantic partners can often identify each other's clothing by smell, and people tend to find the natural sense of genetically compatible partners more attractive. Wedekind and colleagues demonstrated this in 1995. This social aspect of smell extends to group identity as well. Families, communities, and even nations can have characteristic scent profiles based on shared foods, environments, and cultural practices. These shared olfactory experiences contribute to group bonding and cultural identity in ways we're only beginning to understand. As we age, our sense of smell typically declines. This process, called presbyosmia, affects both our ability to detect odors and our ability to form new smell memory associations. Doty and Kamath wrote about this in 2014. However, interestingly, smell-triggered memories from earlier in life often remain vivid and accessible even as general smell sensitivity decreases. This has led researchers to propose that there might be a reminiscence bump in olfactory memory, a period of life, typically in late adolescence and early adulthood, when smell memory associations are particularly strong and lasting. Willander and Larson explored this in 2006. Smells encountered during this period seem to maintain their memory-triggering power throughout life, even as more recent smell associations become weaker. Understanding these age-related changes in smell memory processing has important implications for caring for older adults, particularly those with dementia. Familiar smells from their youth might provide comfort and connection to identity, even when other memory systems are failing. Recent technological advances are opening new frontiers in smell memory research. Functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, now allows us to observe the brain in real time as people experience smell-triggered memories. These studies are revealing the complex neural networks involved in olfactory memory processing and helping us understand individual differences in these processes. Yeshurun and Sobel studied this in 2010. Virtual reality researchers are also beginning to incorporate smell into immersive experiences, recognizing its powerful ability to enhance memory formation and recall. This technology could have applications ranging from education, imagine learning about ancient Rome while smelling authentic Roman foods, to therapy, creating positive virtual environments for trauma recovery. Artificial intelligence is beginning to decode the molecular basis of smell perception, potentially allowing us to predict how new odor molecules will be perceived and what memories they might trigger. This could revolutionize fields from fragrance design to environmental psychology. Understanding the science of smell memory connections has practical applications in many areas of life. In education, teachers can use pleasant scents to create positive learning environments and help students form stronger memories of material. The scent of peppermint, for example, has been shown to enhance attention and memory performance. Moss and colleagues found this in 2008. In healthcare settings, familiar smells can provide comfort to patients and potentially aid in recovery. Some hospitals now use aromatherapy programs, and nursing homes create familiar scent environments to help residents with dementia feel more comfortable and connected to their past. Marketing professionals have long understood the power of scent marketing, using specific odors to influence consumer behavior and create memorable brand experiences. The smell of fresh bread in grocery stores, the signature scents of retail chains, and the carefully crafted fragrances of luxury brands all leverage our smell memory connections. Despite decades of research, many aspects of smell memory connections remain mysterious. We still don't fully understand why some people seem more sensitive to smell-triggered memories than others, or why certain odors become so powerfully associated with specific memories while others don't. The relationship between smell and consciousness is another area of ongoing investigation. Some researchers propose that smell-triggered memories feel more real because they bypass the prefrontal cortex, the brain region associated with conscious, analytical thinking. This might explain why we often feel transported by smell in a way that visual or auditory memories don't achieve. There's also growing interest in the role of smell in false memory formation. Since smell memory connections are so emotionally powerful, they might be particularly susceptible to manipulation or suggestion. Understanding this could have important implications for eyewitness testimony and therapeutic recovered memory techniques. One of the most profound aspects of smell memory connections is their role in shaping our sense of self. The smells we associate with home, family, childhood, and significant life events become part of our personal narrative. They're not just memories, they're the building blocks of identity. Consider how losing one's sense of smell, anosmia, affects more than just the ability to enjoy food or detect danger. Many people with anosmia report feeling disconnected from their past, as if an important dimension of their memories has been erased. This suggests that smell memory connections aren't just add-ons to our cognitive experience. They're fundamental to how we understand ourselves and our place in the world. The powerful connection between smell and memory is increasingly being explored for therapeutic purposes. Aromatherapy, once dismissed by mainstream medicine, is gaining scientific credibility as researchers uncover the neurological basis for scent-induced emotional and physiological changes. For people with depression, certain scents might help access positive memories and improve mood. For individuals with PTSD, carefully controlled exposure to trauma-associated smells, combined with positive experiences, might help reprogram traumatic associations. For patients with dementia, familiar scents might provide anchors to identity and comfort when other memory systems fail. Some innovative therapists are using scent libraries, collections of odors associated with patients' positive memories, as therapeutic tools. By recreating the smell of a patient's childhood home or a favorite place, therapists can help access emotional resources and coping mechanisms that might otherwise be difficult to reach through traditional talk therapy. Our smell memory connections also have broader implications for how we think about environmental change and cultural preservation. As our environments change through urbanization, industrialization, and globalization, we're losing many traditional smells and gaining new ones. The smell of wood smoke from cooking fires, the scent of seasonal flowers, the particular aroma of local foods. These are disappearing from many communities, potentially severing important connections to cultural identity and historical memory. At the same time, new smells, car exhaust, industrial chemicals, mass-produced foods are creating new associations and potentially new health impacts. Some researchers are beginning to document smellscapes, the characteristic odor profiles of different places and times, as a form of cultural and environmental history. These efforts recognize that smell is not just a personal experience, but a shared cultural resource that connects us to place and community. As we reach the end of our olfactory journey, it's worth reflecting on just how remarkable this system really is. Your sense of smell, which you might take for granted or even consider less important than sight or hearing, is actually one of your most sophisticated information processing systems. It's simultaneously a chemical detector, an emotion generator, a memory retriever, and a social communicator. The direct neural pathway from nose to limbic system represents millions of years of evolutionary refinement. It's a system designed not just to detect molecules in the air, but to instantly evaluate their significance, connect them to relevant memories, and prepare appropriate responses. When you smell your grandmother's perfume and feel that wave of love and nostalgia, you're experiencing one of the most ancient and fundamental aspects of human consciousness. But perhaps most remarkably, this system operates largely below the threshold of conscious awareness. Most of the time, you're not actively thinking about smells or making deliberate decisions about olfactory memory retrieval. Your brain is constantly sampling the chemical environment, comparing it to your vast library of smell memory associations, and adjusting your emotional state and behavior accordingly. You're living in a rich, complex, ever-changing landscape of molecular information that's constantly shaping your experience in ways you might never consciously notice. The science of smell memory connections reminds us that we're not just thinking beings who happen to have bodies. We're embodied beings whose thoughts and memories are intimately connected to our physical, chemical interactions with the world. Every breath you take is potentially a doorway to the past, a trigger for emotion, a connector to others, and a guide to the future. As research in this field continues to advance, we're likely to discover even more surprising and profound aspects of how smell shapes our lives. We might develop new therapeutic approaches based on olfactory intervention, create more effective educational techniques that harness the power of scent, or even find ways to preserve and share important cultural smells across generations. So, the next time you catch a whiff of something that suddenly transports you back in time, remember, you're not just remembering a smell. You're experiencing one of the most ancient, powerful, and mysterious aspects of human consciousness. Your nose, it turns out, knows far more than you might have imagined. And with that thought, I encourage you to pay more attention to the smells around you. Notice which ones trigger memories, emotions, or associations. Consider how your own smell memory library has been shaped by your unique experiences, culture, and relationships. Most importantly, appreciate the remarkable fact that this ordinary act of breathing is actually an extraordinary journey into the deepest mysteries of mind, memory, and human experience. Now, don't forget to literally smell the roses on your way out. Your hippocampus will thank you for it. And in case you've enjoyed our evening talk so much and still might be awake, here is another educational video for you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Droning Professor. Tonight's riveting lesson is about why we're drawn to symmetry. So, as you make yourselves comfortable, please take a moment to let us know where you're listening from, and feel free to subscribe. Now, as always, take a moment for some deep breaths, letting your mind and body relax for a good night of sleep. Tonight we're going to explore one of the most fundamental patterns in human perception and preference: symmetry. Now, before you start thinking this is going to be a dry mathematics lecture about mirror images and geometric principles, let me assure you that our journey tonight will take us from the depths of evolutionary biology to the heights of artistic achievement, with stops along the way in neuroscience, psychology, and even your dating life. Yes, you heard that right. The same principle that makes you appreciate a perfectly balanced architectural facade might also be influencing who you swipe right on. But we'll get to that. Let's begin with a simple question. Why do humans find symmetry so appealing? Is it merely cultural conditioning, or is there something deeper, more fundamental about our attraction to balanced forms? As we'll discover tonight, the answer lies in a complex interplay of evolutionary history, neurological wiring, and cultural development that has shaped not just how we see the world, but how we navigate it. To understand why humans are drawn to symmetry, we must first travel back millions of years to understand how this preference evolved. From an evolutionary perspective, symmetry serves as a reliable indicator of several crucial factors that our ancestors needed to assess quickly and accurately for survival. Perhaps nowhere is the importance of symmetry more evident than in mate selection. Research conducted by Randy Thornhill and Stephen Gangestad at the University of New Mexico has consistently shown that facial and body symmetry are strong predictors of attractiveness across cultures. Their research was published in 1999. But why would this be the case? The answer lies in what evolutionary biologists call honest signaling. Symmetrical development requires precise genetic coordination and freedom from environmental stresses during growth. When an organism develops asymmetrically, it often indicates genetic mutations or developmental instabilities. Environmental stresses during growth, such as malnutrition, disease, or parasites, and poor overall health and immune function. A study by Muller and Swaddle, published in 1997, demonstrated that symmetrical individuals across various species, from insects to mammals, typically exhibit superior immune function, better stress resistance, and higher reproductive success. For our ancestors, being able to quickly identify symmetrical and therefore healthy potential mates would have provided a significant evolutionary advantage. Beyond mate selection, symmetry preference served other crucial survival functions. Natural predators and environmental threats often exhibit asymmetrical movement patterns or appearances when they're injured, diseased, or otherwise compromised. A limping predator moves asymmetrically. A diseased plant grows asymmetrically. A structurally unsound shelter appears asymmetrically balanced. Our ancestors, who could quickly detect these asymmetries and either avoid threats or exploit opportunities, such as targeting a wounded prey animal, would have had survival advantages. This created evolutionary pressure favoring individuals with heightened sensitivity to symmetrical versus asymmetrical patterns. The universality of symmetry preference provides strong evidence for its evolutionary basis. Studies conducted by psychologist Judith Langlois and her colleagues have shown that even infants as young as 4 months old demonstrate preferences for symmetrical faces over asymmetrical ones. This research was published by Samuels and colleagues in 1994. This preference appears before significant cultural learning could have occurred, suggesting an innate biological foundation. Furthermore, cross-cultural studies, spanning dozens of societies, from industrialized Western nations to isolated indigenous communities, consistently find symmetry preferences in art, architecture, body decoration, and mate selection. Brown documented this in 1991. The consistency of these preferences across vastly different cultural contexts strongly suggests biological rather than purely cultural origins. Now that we understand why symmetry preference might have evolved, let's explore how our brains actually process symmetrical information. This is where things get particularly fascinating, and I promise it's more interesting than watching paint dry, though arguably, watching symmetrically applied paint dry might be oddly satisfying. Recent advances in neuroimaging have revealed specific brain regions and networks involved in symmetry detection and processing. Research by cognitive neuroscientist Zygmunt Pislow and his team at Purdue University has identified several key findings. The extrastriate cortex, particularly area V4, shows heightened activation when processing symmetrical stimuli. Tyler and colleagues published this finding in 2005. This region, known for its role in shape and form processing, appears to have dedicated neural circuits for detecting symmetrical patterns. The fusiform face area also shows increased activation in response to facial symmetry, which aligns with our evolutionary understanding of symmetry's role in mate selection and social perception. Yovel and Kanwisher documented this in 2004. One of the most remarkable aspects of symmetry processing is its speed and efficiency. Humans can detect symmetrical patterns in as little as 50 to 100 milliseconds, faster than conscious awareness. Locker and Wagemans published this finding in 1993. This rapid processing suggests that symmetry detection operates at a preconscious level, supporting its role as an adaptive mechanism. The brain's efficiency in processing symmetrical information appears to stem from its ability to use predictive coding. When the brain detects that one half of a visual field mirrors the other, it can essentially predict the missing information, reducing computational load and increasing processing speed. Friston described this mechanism in 2010. But why does symmetry not only capture our attention but also generate positive emotional responses? Neuroimaging studies have shown that viewing symmetrical patterns activates the brain's reward system, including the orbitofrontal cortex and anterior cingulate cortex regions associated with pleasure and aesthetic appreciation. Jacobson and colleagues published this research in 2006. This neurological reward response suggests that our brains are literally wired to find symmetry pleasurable. It's as if evolution installed a symmetry bonus in our neural reward system, encouraging us to seek out and appreciate balanced forms. The human fascination with symmetry extends far beyond biological imperatives into the realm of culture and artistic expression. Archaeological evidence suggests that humans have been creating and appreciating symmetrical designs for at least 40,000 years, with some of the earliest known artistic expressions featuring symmetrical patterns and forms. Every major ancient civilization incorporated symmetry as a fundamental principle in their art and architecture. Egyptian architecture exemplified perfect bilateral symmetry, from the pyramids to temple facades. Greek art and architecture elevated symmetry to a philosophical principle with the concept of the golden ratio, phi equals 1.618, representing perfect proportional balance. Islamic art developed incredibly sophisticated symmetrical patterns, creating mathematical masterpieces in mosaic and architectural decoration. Chinese philosophy centered the concept of balance and symmetry in the yin-yang symbol and feng shui principles. The Renaissance period marked a particularly intense focus on symmetry and mathematical proportion in art. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci didn't just appreciate symmetry aesthetically, they studied it scientifically. Da Vinci's famous Vitruvian Man represents the intersection of art, anatomy, and mathematical proportion, embodying the Renaissance belief that perfect human beauty corresponded to perfect mathematical relationships. Architects like Andrea Palladio created buildings based on strict symmetrical principles, influencing architectural design for centuries to come. The persistence and influence of these symmetrical designs suggest that they tap into something fundamental about human aesthetic preferences. Modern architecture continues to grapple with symmetry, though approaches have become more varied and complex. While some architects embrace perfect symmetry, think of the U.S. Capitol building or the Taj Mahal, others play with asymmetrical balance or dynamic symmetries that create visual interest while maintaining underlying harmonic principles. Frank Lloyd Wright, for example, often used what he called organic symmetry, symmetrical principles derived from natural forms rather than rigid geometric rules. His Falling Water House demonstrates how symmetrical elements can be integrated with natural asymmetries to create buildings that feel both balanced and dynamic. In the commercial world, symmetry plays a crucial role in logo design and branding. Studies in consumer psychology have shown that symmetrical logos are processed more quickly, remembered more easily, and generally rated as more trustworthy than asymmetrical designs. Henderson and colleagues published this research in 2003. Consider some of the world's most recognizable logos: McDonald's Golden Arches, the Starbucks Mermaid, the Mercedes-Benz three-pointed star. All feature strong symmetrical elements that contribute to their memorability and appeal. However, clever designers also know when to break symmetry for effect. Apple's bitten apple logo gains memorability partly through its asymmetrical bite. From a psychological perspective, symmetry preference can be understood through several cognitive mechanisms that govern how we process and organize information. The Gestalt school of psychology, founded in the early 20th century, identified symmetry as one of the fundamental principles governing visual perception. According to Gestalt theory, humans naturally organize visual information into coherent wholes, and symmetrical arrangements are processed more easily because they conform to our brain's organizational preferences. Kafka described this in 1935. The principle of prégnance, or good form, suggests that we prefer visual arrangements that are simple rather than complex, regular rather than irregular, symmetrical rather than asymmetrical, and closed rather than open. These preferences appear to reflect the brain's tendency to minimize processing effort while maximizing information extraction. Modern cognitive psychology has refined our understanding of why symmetrical forms are preferred through the concept of processing fluency. Research by psychologist Rolf Reber has shown that stimuli that are easier to process mentally are generally rated as more attractive and positive. Reber and colleagues published this in 2004. Symmetrical patterns are processed more fluently because they contain redundant information. One half mirrors the other. They conform to predictable organizational rules. They require less working memory to maintain mental representations, and they activate well-established neural pathways. This fluency translates into positive aesthetic and emotional responses, creating a psychological basis for symmetry preference that complements its evolutionary foundations. While symmetry preference appears to be universal, there are notable individual and cultural variations that provide insights into its psychological mechanisms. Research has revealed interesting correlations between personality traits and symmetry preferences. Individuals high in need for order and conscientiousness show stronger preferences for symmetrical arrangements. Sylvia and Barona published this finding in 2009. People with higher cognitive complexity are more likely to appreciate subtle asymmetries and dynamic balance. Those with anxiety disorders sometimes show heightened sensitivity to symmetrical arrangements, possibly related to underlying needs for predictability and control. While symmetry preference is universal, cultures vary in how they express and elaborate this preference. Western aesthetics traditionally emphasized perfect bilateral symmetry. Eastern aesthetics often incorporate concepts like asymmetrical balance, where overall harmony is achieved through carefully orchestrated imbalances. Indigenous art traditions frequently use symmetry in ritual and spiritual contexts, connecting balanced forms to cosmic or spiritual principles. These cultural variations suggest that while the basic preference for symmetry is biologically grounded, its expression is significantly shaped by cultural learning and aesthetic traditions. Nature provides countless examples of symmetrical forms, from the microscopic to the cosmic scale. Understanding natural symmetry helps explain both why we evolved to appreciate it and how we can apply these principles in human design. Living organisms exhibit various types of symmetry. Most animals, including humans, exhibit bilateral symmetry with roughly mirror image left and right halves. This body plan evolved because it provides several advantages: streamlined movement through environments, balanced sensory input from both sides, efficient neural organization and control, and structural stability and strength. Organisms like jellyfish, sea anemones, and flowers exhibit radial symmetry, with body parts arranged around a central axis. This pattern is particularly common in sessile, or non-moving organisms, and provides equal access to environmental resources from all directions, efficient distribution of nutrients and information, and aesthetic appeal that attracts pollinators or prey. Many natural forms exhibit fractal symmetry, where similar patterns repeat at different scales. Examples include tree branching patterns, lightning bolts, coastlines, and blood vessel networks. Research by physicist Richard Taylor has shown that humans find fractal patterns with specific mathematical properties, fractal dimensions between 1.3 and 1.5, particularly appealing, possibly because these dimensions are common in natural environments where humans evolved. Taylor published this research in 2006. Even at the molecular level, symmetry plays a crucial role in determining the properties and behaviors of matter. Crystal structures, protein folding patterns, and DNA's double helix all demonstrate how symmetrical arrangements can create stability, efficiency, and functionality. Understanding natural symmetries has led to innovations in human design and technology. Architects study natural forms to create buildings that are both aesthetically pleasing and functionally efficient. The work of Antoni Gaudí, for example, extensively incorporated natural symmetrical patterns, creating structures that feel organic while maintaining structural integrity. Engineers use symmetrical principles from nature to design everything from more efficient airplane wings, inspired by bird wing symmetries, to stronger building materials, inspired by the symmetrical structure of spider silk. Software designers apply symmetrical principles to create interfaces that are intuitive and visually appealing, drawing on both natural patterns and human psychological preferences. The role of symmetry in human face perception deserves special attention, as it demonstrates how evolutionary preferences continue to influence modern social interactions. Extensive research has established several key findings about facial symmetry and attractiveness. Cross-cultural consistency. Studies spanning dozens of cultures consistently find that more symmetrical faces are rated as more attractive. Langlois and colleagues published this research in 2000. Developmental stability. Facial symmetry correlates with indicators of genetic quality, including immune function, hormonal balance, and overall health. Thornhill and Gangestad documented this in 1999. Social benefits. Individuals with more symmetrical faces are often perceived as more trustworthy, intelligent, and socially desirable, even in non-romantic contexts. Rhodes published this finding in 2006. Economists have identified what they term the beauty premium, the economic benefits that attractive individuals receive in employment, income, and social opportunities. A significant portion of this premium appears to be driven by facial symmetry, suggesting that ancient evolutionary preferences continue to influence modern economic and social outcomes. Research by economist Daniel Hamermesh has shown that individuals in the top quartile of attractiveness, heavily correlated with symmetry, earn approximately 10 to 15% more over their lifetimes compared to those in the bottom quartile. Hamermesh published this research in 2011. Symmetry preferences extend beyond faces to entire body configurations. Research has shown that individuals with more symmetrical body proportions are rated as more attractive and are often more successful in athletic performance, possibly due to more efficient biomechanical coordination. Manning and Pickup published this in 1998. Studies using point light displays, where only joint movements are visible, have shown that symmetrical movement patterns are perceived as more attractive and healthier, even when other visual cues are absent. Brown and colleagues published this research in 2005. While we've focused extensively on symmetry preferences, it's important to understand that perfect symmetry isn't always optimal for aesthetic appeal. Some of the most compelling art, architecture, and design deliberately breaks symmetrical expectations to create visual interest and emotional impact. Japanese aesthetics, particularly the concept of wabi-sabi, celebrates imperfection and asymmetry as sources of beauty. This aesthetic philosophy suggests that slight imperfections and asymmetries can create more engaging and emotionally resonant experiences than perfect symmetry. Similarly, the rule of thirds in photography and visual composition deliberately creates asymmetrical arrangements that are often more visually compelling than perfectly centered, symmetrical compositions. In music, visual art, and architecture, the strategic use of asymmetry can create aesthetic tension that makes eventual symmetrical resolution more satisfying. This technique, used by composers from Bach to the Beatles and artists from Da Vinci to Picasso, demonstrates sophisticated understanding of how symmetry and asymmetry can work together to create compelling aesthetic experiences. The fashion industry has long understood the interplay between symmetry and asymmetry. While symmetrical arrangements often appear more formal and stable, asymmetrical elements can create visual interest, suggest movement, and express individuality. The most successful fashion designs often incorporate both symmetrical foundations and asymmetrical accents. Modern technology increasingly incorporates symmetry, detection, and analysis, demonstrating the practical importance of understanding these principles. Computer facial recognition systems rely heavily on symmetry analysis to identify individuals and assess image quality. These systems use symmetry as a key feature for detecting face orientation and pose, identifying potential image distortions, assessing image quality and processing requirements, and improving recognition accuracy across different lighting conditions. Medical professionals use symmetry analysis to detect anomalies and diagnose conditions. In radiology, comparing left and right sides of X-rays, MRI scans, and CT images to identify asymmetries that might indicate pathology. In dermatology, using symmetry analysis to evaluate moles and skin lesions for potential malignancy. In orthodontics, assessing facial and dental symmetry to plan treatments. In physical therapy, analyzing movement symmetries to diagnose and treat biomechanical problems. Researchers are developing AI systems that can evaluate aesthetic appeal based on symmetrical principles. These systems are being used in automated photo editing, software that can automatically improve composition using symmetry principles. In architectural design, AI assistants that help architects create more visually appealing and structurally sound buildings. In product design, systems that optimize product appearance based on symmetry and proportion principles. In digital art generation, AI systems that create artwork incorporating sophisticated understanding of symmetrical balance. The human response to symmetry has found applications in therapeutic contexts. The creation and contemplation of symmetrical mandala patterns has been used therapeutically for centuries. Research by art therapist Joan Kellogg has shown that mandala creation can reduce anxiety and stress, improve focus and concentration, facilitate emotional expression and processing, and promote feelings of balance and centeredness. The symmetrical nature of mandalas appears to activate the same neural reward systems we discussed earlier, providing a neurological basis for their therapeutic effects. Healthcare facility design increasingly incorporates symmetrical principles to create healing environments. Research has shown that patients in symmetrically designed hospital rooms often experience reduced anxiety and stress, improved sleep quality, faster recovery times, and higher satisfaction with care. These effects appear to stem from the calming and predictable nature of symmetrical environments, which reduce cognitive load during times when patients need to focus energy on healing. Understanding symmetry preferences has implications for educational design. Classrooms and educational materials designed with symmetrical principles often show improved learning outcomes, possibly due to reduced visual distraction and cognitive load, enhanced focus and attention, improved spatial reasoning development, and greater aesthetic satisfaction, which can improve motivation. Symmetry provides a powerful tool for teaching abstract, mathematical, and scientific concepts. In geometry, symmetry helps students understand spatial relationships and transformations. In biology, natural symmetries illustrate evolutionary principles and structural organization. In chemistry, molecular symmetries help explain chemical properties and reactions. In physics, symmetry principles underlie fundamental laws of nature. Several exciting areas of symmetry research are currently developing. Neuroaesthetics is an emerging field that combines neuroscience, psychology, and art history to understand how the brain processes aesthetic experiences. Researchers like Samir Zeki at University College London are using advanced brain imaging to understand exactly how symmetrical patterns create aesthetic and emotional responses. Computer scientists are developing algorithms that can evaluate and create aesthetically pleasing designs based on symmetry principles. This research has applications in automated graphic design, video game environment generation, architectural planning software, fashion design assistance, and web interface optimization. Comparative psychology research is exploring whether other species share human symmetry preferences, which could provide insights into the evolutionary origins and neural mechanisms of aesthetic appreciation. Future technologies may increasingly incorporate sophisticated understanding of human symmetry preferences. VR and AR designers are learning to use symmetry principles to create more immersive and comfortable virtual environments. Understanding how symmetry affects spatial perception and navigation could improve user experience and reduce motion sickness. City planners are beginning to incorporate symmetry principles into urban design, using both traditional symmetrical planning, like the layout of Washington, D.C., and more sophisticated approaches that balance symmetry with organic growth patterns. Future technologies might be able to adapt aesthetic elements, colors, patterns, layouts to individual preferences while maintaining underlying symmetrical principles that appeal to universal human tendencies. As we reach the end of our exploration, let's return to our original question: why are humans drawn to symmetry? The answer, as we've discovered, is beautifully complex, much like a well-designed symmetrical pattern itself. Our attraction to symmetry emerges from the intersection of evolutionary heritage, millions of years of natural selection favoring individuals who could quickly assess health, genetic quality, and environmental safety through symmetry detection. Neurological architecture, brain systems optimized for efficient processing of symmetrical information, and rewarding us with positive emotional responses when we encounter balanced forms. Cultural elaboration, human societies building upon biological foundations to create sophisticated, artistic, architectural, and design traditions that celebrate and refine symmetrical principles. Psychological comfort, the cognitive ease and predictability that symmetrical arrangements provide, reducing mental effort and creating feelings of stability and order. Social signaling, the continued role of symmetry in communication about health, status, trustworthiness, and aesthetic sophistication. Yet our exploration has also revealed a fascinating paradox. While we're drawn to symmetry, perfect symmetry isn't always optimal for aesthetic appeal or functional design. The most compelling human creations often incorporate symmetrical foundations with carefully orchestrated asymmetrical elements that create visual interest, emotional engagement, and dynamic balance. This suggests that human aesthetic preferences are more sophisticated than simple symmetry-seeking algorithms. We've evolved not just to appreciate balance, but to recognize when breaking balance can create even more compelling experiences. Understanding symmetry preferences has practical implications across numerous fields. Designers can create more appealing and effective visual communications. Architects can build structures that feel both stable and inspiring. Educators can create learning environments that reduce cognitive load while maintaining engagement. Healthcare providers can design healing environments that promote recovery. Technology developers can build interfaces and systems that align with deep-seated human preferences. As we move into an increasingly digital and technologically mediated world, understanding fundamental human preferences like symmetry appreciation becomes even more important. Virtual environments, AI-generated content, and automated design systems all benefit from incorporating sophisticated understanding of how humans perceive and respond to balanced forms. At the same time, our exploration suggests the importance of preserving and celebrating the cultural diversity in how different societies express and elaborate symmetry principles. While the basic preference appears universal, its cultural expressions are beautifully varied and worth protecting. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of human symmetry preference is how it connects us simultaneously to our biological heritage and our highest cultural achievements. The same neural systems that helped our ancestors survive in challenging natural environments also allow us to appreciate the mathematical elegance of Bach's compositions, the architectural majesty of the Taj Mahal, and the simple pleasure of a well-balanced photograph. In a world that often feels chaotic and unbalanced, our attraction to symmetry represents something profoundly hopeful, an innate human tendency to seek and create order, beauty, and harmony. Whether we're arranging furniture in our homes, designing websites, or simply appreciating a sunset reflected in still water, we're participating in an ancient human tradition of finding and creating balance in the world around us. And perhaps that's the most beautiful symmetry of all, the way our deepest biological instincts align with our highest aesthetic aspirations, creating a perfect balance between what we need to survive and what we need to thrive as conscious, creative beings. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to your questions and discussion. And in case you've enjoyed our evening talk so much and still might be awake, here is another educational video for you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to The Droning Professor. Tonight's lesson is about how owls rotate their heads, almost 360 degrees. So as you make yourselves comfortable, please take a moment to let us know where you're listening from, and feel free to subscribe. Now, as always, take a moment, pause to calm your mind, take some deep breaths, letting your mind and body relax for a good night of sleep. Before we begin today's lecture, I want you all to try something with me. Turn your head to the right as far as you comfortably can. Now try a little further. How far did you get? Maybe 90 degrees if you're particularly flexible? Now imagine being able to turn your head so far that you could look directly behind you without moving your body at all. Sounds impossible, right? Well, for owls, this isn't just possible, it's another regular day. Today we're diving into one of nature's most spectacular anatomical achievements, how owls can rotate their heads up to 270 degrees. That's 3/4 of a full circle, folks. If humans could do this, we'd never need rear-view mirrors, and the phrase eyes in the back of your head would be literally achievable. Unfortunately, if we tried to replicate this feat, we'd end up with what medical professionals call a very bad day. So what makes owls so special? Why can they perform this seemingly impossible contortion, while the rest of us are stuck with our measly 180-degree range of motion? The answer lies in millions of years of evolution that have crafted one of the most sophisticated cervical systems in the animal kingdom. To understand how owls rotate their heads, we first need to understand why they needed to evolve this ability in the first place. It all comes down to a fundamental trade-off in evolutionary design that I like to call the great eye mobility paradox. Most animals, including humans, have eyes that can move independently within their sockets. We can look left, right, up, down, and track moving objects without turning our heads. This eye mobility gives us a wide field of vision and the ability to quickly scan our environment. However, there's a cost to this flexibility. Our eyes are relatively small compared to our skull size, which limits how much light they can gather and how sharp our vision can be. Owls, being primarily nocturnal predators, faced a different evolutionary pressure. They needed exceptional night vision to hunt in near-complete darkness. Evolution's solution was to give them enormous eyes, so large in fact that they're not technically eyeballs at all. Owl eyes are more accurately described as eye tubes or eye cylinders. These tubular structures can gather an enormous amount of light, giving owls vision that's up to 100 times more sensitive than human vision. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. These massive eye tubes are so large that they completely fill the owl's skull. There's literally no room for the complex musculature that would allow the eyes to move. Imagine trying to fit a telescope into a tennis ball and then expecting it to swivel around freely. It simply won't work. So owls are stuck with fixed eyes that cannot move in their sockets. They're like living, breathing security cameras that can only look in one direction. This presents a serious problem for a predator that needs to scan for prey, watch for threats, and navigate through complex three-dimensional forest environments. Evolution's elegant solution? If you can't move your eyes, move your entire head instead. And not just a little bit, move it so dramatically that you can see in almost every direction without taking a single step. Now that we understand the why, let's explore the how. The secret to owl head rotation lies in a series of anatomical modifications that would make a yoga instructor weep with envy. Let's start with the foundation, the cervical vertebrae. Humans have 7 cervical vertebrae in our necks, the same number as giraffes, by the way, which always surprises my students. These vertebrae allow us our limited head rotation. Owls, depending on the species, have between 12 and 15 cervical vertebrae. That's more than double what we have, and each one is specially adapted for maximum flexibility. But it's not just about having more vertebrae, it's about how they're shaped and connected. Human cervical vertebrae are relatively uniform and compact, designed for stability as much as mobility. We need our heads to stay put when we're running, jumping, or doing other activities that involve sudden movements. Falling off a cliff because your head twisted too far during a sprint would be what evolutionary biologists call maladaptive. Owl vertebrae, on the other hand, are elongated and have specialized joint surfaces that allow for extreme articulation. Think of the difference between a short, rigid chain and a long, flexible rope. The owl's neck is anatomically more like that rope. It can bend, twist, and curve in ways that would snap our more rigid cervical spine. The individual vertebrae also have enlarged spaces for blood vessels and nerve bundles, which becomes crucial when we talk about the circulatory adaptations that make this rotation possible. But we'll get to that fascinating topic in just a moment. Here's where things get really interesting, and frankly, a bit scary from a human perspective. When you rotate your head even modestly, say, looking over your shoulder to check for traffic, you're already putting some stress on the blood vessels in your neck. The carotid arteries, which supply blood to your brain, have to stretch and bend slightly. Now imagine rotating your head 270 degrees. In humans, this would be catastrophic. We'd compress or even tear our carotid arteries, cutting off blood flow to the brain. The result would be stroke, unconsciousness, and probably death. It's nature's way of saying, "This is a very bad idea. Please stop." Owls have solved this problem with what can only be described as biological engineering brilliance. Their carotid arteries don't just run straight up their necks like ours do. Instead, they follow a more complex, looping path that creates extra length and flexibility. Think of it like having extra cable behind your computer monitor. When you swivel the monitor, the cables don't get stretched to their breaking point because there's slack built into the system. But the adaptations go even deeper. Owls have enlarged arterial pools at the base of their skulls that act like biological backup batteries. When the head rotates to extreme positions and blood flow becomes temporarily restricted, these pools provide a reserve blood supply to keep the brain functioning normally. It's like having a surge protector for your brain's blood supply. Additionally, the vertebral arteries, another major blood supply to the brain, are housed in bony canals that are significantly wider than those found in other birds. This extra space allows the arteries to move freely within the canals during head rotation, preventing compression and maintaining steady blood flow. Of course, All the flexible bones and adaptable blood vessels in the world wouldn't help if owls didn't have the muscular system to power these rotations. And this is where owl anatomy becomes truly impressive. The muscles that control owl neck movement are arranged in multiple layers, each with specific functions. The superficial muscles provide the raw power for major head movements, while the deeper, smaller muscles control fine adjustments and maintain precise positioning. It's like having both a bulldozer and a Swiss watch integrated into the same system. Some of these muscles are asymmetrical, meaning they're larger on one side than the other. This asymmetry allows for the smooth, controlled rotation that owls are famous for. Without this careful balance, owls would be stuck with jerky, robotic head movements that would be about as subtle as a fire alarm going off in a library. The muscle fibers themselves are also specialized. They have a higher concentration of slow twitch fibers than typical bird neck muscles. Slow twitch fibers don't provide explosive power, but they're excellent for sustained, controlled movements and for holding positions for extended periods. This is crucial for a predator that might need to track prey for several minutes while maintaining perfect stillness. Having the hardware for extreme head rotation is one thing, but controlling it precisely is another challenge entirely. The owl's nervous system has evolved sophisticated coordination mechanisms to make this all work seamlessly. The vestibular system, which controls balance and spatial orientation, is highly developed in owls. This makes sense when you consider that rapidly rotating your head 270 degrees without losing track of which way is up requires exceptional spatial awareness. Humans get dizzy just from spinning around a few times. Owls need to maintain perfect equilibrium, while their heads are performing what amounts to anatomical acrobatics. The proprioceptive system, the network of sensors that tells your brain where your body parts are in space, is also enhanced. Owls need to know exactly how far they've rotated their heads and in which direction, especially when hunting in complete darkness. Making a mistake in spatial calculation when you're diving toward prey at high speed is the kind of error that natural selection tends to correct rather permanently. While we often talk about owl head rotation as if all owls are identical, there's actually considerable variation among species. The great horned owl, one of North America's most common owls, can rotate its head approximately 270 degrees. That's impressive, but it's not the record holder. Some species, particularly the smaller owls like the northern saw-whet owl, can achieve rotations closer to 280 degrees. The exact range varies based on several factors, including neck length, body size, and hunting strategy. Interestingly, the largest owls like the great gray owl and the Eurasian eagle owl tend to have slightly less rotational range than their smaller cousins. This makes sense from a biomechanical perspective. The larger the head, the more force required to rotate it quickly, and the greater the stress on the supporting structures. It's the same principle that explains why compact cars can make sharper turns than semi-trucks. Different hunting strategies also influence head rotation capabilities. Owls that hunt in dense forests, where they need to look around trees and through complex vegetation, tend to have greater rotational range than owls that hunt in open fields. Evolution is remarkably practical that way. From a physics standpoint, owl head rotation involves some fascinating principles of biomechanics. The head acts as a lever system, with the cervical vertebrae serving as fulcrums. The arrangement of muscles provides both the effort force and the resistance necessary for controlled movement. The moment of inertia, the resistance of an object to changes in rotation, varies significantly between owl heads and human heads. Owl heads are generally more streamlined and have a more favorable mass distribution for rotation. Their facial discs, while large, are mostly composed of lightweight feathers rather than heavy bone or muscle. Angular momentum also plays a role in owl head rotation. Once an owl begins rotating its head in one direction, the momentum helps carry the movement through to completion. However, owls have excellent muscular control that allows them to stop the rotation at precisely the right angle, despite this momentum. All of this anatomical sophistication serves a very practical purpose: making owls incredibly effective hunters. The ability to rotate their heads nearly 360 degrees gives owls several hunting advantages that are hard to overstate. First, there's the surveillance advantage. An owl perched on a branch can monitor nearly its entire surroundings without moving its body and potentially alerting prey. This is particularly important because owls rely heavily on stealth. Their silent flight achieved through specialized feather structures would be wasted if they had to constantly shift their bodies to scan for prey. Second, there's the precision advantage. Once an owl has located prey, it can track the target's movement with minute head adjustments while keeping its body perfectly still. This allows for incredibly accurate strikes, even in complete darkness. Third, there's the energy efficiency advantage. Moving just your head requires far less energy than repositioning your entire body. For a predator that might spend hours hunting in a single night, this energy conservation can be crucial. Owls aren't the only animals that have faced the challenge of needing a wide field of vision. Different evolutionary lineages have come up with different solutions, and comparing these approaches helps us appreciate just how remarkable the owl solution really is. Most birds have eyes on the sides of their heads, giving them nearly 360-degree vision without needing to move their heads at all. However, this comes at the cost of depth perception. With eyes on the sides of their heads, these birds have very limited binocular vision. The overlap between what each eye sees that allows for accurate distance judgment. Owls have taken the opposite approach. Their eyes face forward, providing excellent binocular vision and depth perception crucial for accurate hunting. But this forward-facing arrangement creates a blind spot directly behind them. The extreme head rotation compensates for this blind spot. Mammals have generally stuck with the movable eye approach, but some have pushed it to extremes. Chameleons can move their eyes independently of each other, allowing them to look in two different directions simultaneously. This would probably cause humans to have severe headaches, but chameleons seem to manage just fine. Some mammals have developed elongated necks to improve their visual range. Giraffes are the obvious example, but even they can only achieve about 180 degrees of head rotation. Their solution to seeing behind them is simply to have a neck so long that behind them is very far away indeed. Despite all their adaptations, owls do have limitations in their head rotation. The most obvious is that they can't quite achieve a full 360-degree rotation. Even the most flexible owl species max out at around 280 degrees. That last 80 degrees represents a genuine blind spot that owls have to compensate for through body positioning and movement. There's also a speed limitation. While owls can rotate their heads remarkably far, they can't do it infinitely fast. Rapid head rotation could still cause problems with blood flow and spatial orientation, so owls must balance speed with safety. Additionally, extreme head rotation appears to require some recovery time. After rotating to maximum extension, owls typically need to return to a more neutral position before making another extreme rotation in the opposite direction. It's as if their circulatory and nervous systems need a moment to reset. Our understanding of owl head rotation has advanced dramatically in recent decades, thanks to new research techniques and technologies. High-speed cameras have allowed researchers to study the precise mechanics of head rotation in ways that were impossible with earlier technology. X-ray cinematography has revealed the real-time movement of bones and joints during rotation, providing insights into the biomechanics that static anatomical studies couldn't capture. CT scanning has allowed for detailed three-dimensional analysis of owl cervical anatomy, revealing subtle structural features that had been missed in traditional dissection studies. Doppler ultrasound has been used to study blood flow in owl arteries during head rotation, confirming the effectiveness of their vascular adaptations. This research has shown that blood flow to the brain remains remarkably stable, even during extreme head positions. Some of the most recent research has used implanted sensors to study head rotation in wild owls, providing data about how often and how extensively owls actually use their rotational abilities in natural settings. Surprisingly, while owls are capable of extreme rotation, They typically use much more modest ranges during normal hunting activities, saving the dramatic rotations for situations that truly require them. The study of owl head rotation has inspired engineers and designers working on various technological challenges. Roboticists have studied owl cervical anatomy to design more flexible and capable robotic neck systems. Camera mount designers have borrowed principles from owl anatomy to create more stable and versatile equipment for wildlife photography and surveillance applications. The idea of creating mechanical systems that can achieve large rotational ranges while maintaining stable blood supply, or in the case of machines, stable power and data connections, has broad applications. Medical device designers have studied owl vascular adaptations for insights into creating flexible catheters and other devices that need to maintain function while being bent and twisted inside the human body. Even architects have found inspiration in owl anatomy, particularly in designing building systems that need to accommodate movement and flexibility while maintaining structural integrity. Understanding owl anatomy and behavior has important implications for owl conservation. Many owl species are facing pressure from habitat loss, climate change, and human development. Knowledge about their specific physiological needs and capabilities helps inform conservation strategies. For example, understanding that owls rely heavily on their extreme head rotation for hunting success emphasizes the importance of preserving the complex, three-dimensional forest habitats, where this ability provides the greatest advantage. Open agricultural areas, while they might seem suitable for owls, don't provide the environmental complexity that makes extreme head rotation most valuable. Research into owl physiology also helps wildlife rehabilitators better understand how to care for injured owls. Neck injuries, which might seem relatively minor in other birds, can be devastating to owls because they interfere with this crucial hunting adaptation. The evolution of extreme head rotation in owls raises interesting questions about evolutionary constraints and possibilities. Why haven't other nocturnal predators evolved similar capabilities? What other anatomical trade-offs might have been possible? Some researchers are investigating whether the owl solution to the fixed eye problem represents an optimal evolutionary solution, or merely one successful solution among many possibilities. Computer modeling of different anatomical arrangements suggests that the owl approach may indeed be close to optimal for their specific ecological niche. Future research directions include more detailed studies of the developmental biology that produces these anatomical features. Understanding how owl cervical anatomy develops during embryonic growth could provide insights into the evolutionary origins of these adaptations. There's also growing interest in studying the sensory integration that allows owls to use their head rotation effectively. How do owls process the constantly changing visual input that results from dramatic head movements? How do they maintain spatial orientation during complex rotational sequences? As we wrap up today's lecture, I want you to appreciate just how remarkable owl head rotation really is. What seems like a simple parlor trick is actually the result of millions of years of evolutionary refinement, involving coordinated modifications to skeletal, muscular, vascular, and nervous systems. The next time you see an owl, whether in person, in a zoo, or even in a nature documentary, take a moment to appreciate the incredible biological engineering that allows that seemingly effortless head rotation. Behind that simple movement is a symphony of anatomical adaptations working in perfect harmony. From elongated vertebrae to specialized blood vessels, from asymmetrical muscles to enhanced proprioceptive systems, every component has been shaped by natural selection to enable this remarkable capability. It's a testament to both the power of evolutionary processes and the intricate beauty of biological design. The owl's rotating head also serves as a reminder that nature often solves problems in ways that human engineers might never consider. When faced with the constraint of immovable eyes, owls didn't develop better eye muscles, they revolutionized their entire cervical anatomy instead. This kind of creative problem-solving is what makes biology endlessly fascinating and what continues to inspire new generations of researchers, engineers, and nature enthusiasts. The natural world is full of solutions we haven't discovered yet, adaptations we haven't fully understood, and inspirations we haven't yet applied to human challenges. So the next time someone asks you how owls can rotate their heads almost 360 degrees, you'll know that the answer involves much more than just flexible necks. It's a story of evolutionary innovation, biomechanical sophistication, and the remarkable ability of living systems to find elegant solutions to complex challenges. And if you ever find yourself wishing you could rotate your head like an owl to see what's happening behind you, just remember, be careful what you wish for. Along with that amazing ability would come the need to completely redesign your circulatory system, nervous system, and skeletal structure. Sometimes it's better to just be grateful for rearview mirrors. Thank you for your attention tonight, and I'll see you next time. And in case you've enjoyed our evening talk so much and still might be awake, here is another educational video for you.